The gunshot echoed through the canyon just as Dr. Amelia Sterling raised her telescope toward the setting sun, her scientific calculations scattering across the desert floor like frightened birds. Amelia dove behind a boulder, her heart hammering against her ribs as another bullet ricocheted off the rock face above her head. She had traveled all the way from Boston to Miles City, Montana, in the summer of 1883, to study the night sky in this remote territory, far from the gaslight pollution of eastern cities. The local astronomical society had assured her that the Badlands outside town offered perfect conditions for observing the upcoming meteor shower. They had neglected to mention that the region also offered perfect conditions for bandits looking to rob lone travelers. "Come on out, lady," a rough voice called from somewhere among the rocks. "We ain't gonna hurt you none. Just want your money and that fancy equipment." Amelia pressed herself against the stone, her traveling dress already torn and dusty from the scramble for cover. Her camping equipment lay scattered across her makeshift observatory site, including the expensive brass telescope her late father had given her before his death 3 years ago. She would rather die than let these criminals take it. "I have no money," she called back, which was mostly true. She had spent nearly everything on this expedition. Harsh laughter echoed through the canyon. "Then we'll take the equipment. That telescope looks like it's worth a pretty penny." Amelia closed her eyes, trying to think. She had foolishly insisted on camping alone despite the warnings from the townspeople. Her pride and independence had led her straight into danger. The sun was setting fast, and soon she would be alone in the darkness with men who clearly had no respect for the law. The sound of approaching footsteps made her breath catch. They were getting closer, emboldened by her silence. She looked around desperately for anything she could use as a weapon, but her scientific instruments would be useless against guns. Then she heard it. The thunder of hoofbeats approaching fast from the south. "Someone's coming," one of the bandits hissed. "Just one rider," another replied. "Take care of him, Jake." Amelia risked a glance around the boulder and saw a lone figure on horseback racing toward her camp at full gallop. The rider wore a wide-brimmed hat pulled low, and even in the fading light, she could see the glint of a rifle in his hands. The bandits opened fire, but the rider was already moving, guiding his horse with just his knees while bringing the rifle to his shoulder. He fired once, twice, and Amelia heard a yelp of pain from one of the bandits. The rider swung down from his horse while it was still moving, using the animal as cover as more shots rang out. "Behind the rocks," he shouted to Amelia, his voice deep and commanding. "Stay down." Amelia did not need to be told twice. She flattened herself against the ground as bullets whizzed overhead. The firefight seemed to last forever, though it probably only lasted a few minutes. She heard grunts, curses, the metallic click of guns being reloaded. Then silence. "You all right, madam?" Amelia looked up to find the rider standing over her, his rifle lowered but still ready. He was tall and lean, with sun-darkened skin and eyes the color of storm clouds. A day's worth of stubble shadowed his strong jaw, and dust covered his worn leather vest and denim pants. He looked to be in his late 20s, perhaps 30 at most, and despite the violence that had just occurred, his hand was steady as he offered it to her. Yes, I think so," Amelia managed, accepting his help. Her legs felt shaky as she stood, and she had to grab his arm to steady herself. He was solid as oak beneath her grip. "Name's Preston Parker," he said, tipping his hat slightly. "I work at the Double Bar Ranch about 10 miles south of here. Saw the glint of sunlight off your telescope from the ridge and figured I'd ride over to investigate. Good thing I did." "Good thing indeed," Amelia said, her voice trembling slightly as the reality of her situation sank in. "I'm Dr. Amelia Sterling. I owe you my life, Mr. Parker. Preston's eyes widened slightly at her title, but he did not comment on it. Instead, he moved past her to check on the bandits. Two of them lay groaning on the ground, wounded but alive. The third had fled on horseback, leaving his companions behind. These two need a doctor, Preston said, examining them briefly. But first we need to get you someplace safe. Where are you staying? I have a room at the Grand Hotel in Miles City, Amelia replied, watching as he efficiently tied up the wounded men with rope from his saddle. But my equipment, I cannot just leave it here. Preston glanced at her scattered belongings, then at the darkening sky. We will pack what we can carry now and come back for the rest in the morning with a wagon. These men need medical attention, and I do not fancy being out here when their friend comes back with reinforcements. Amelia wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. Together, they quickly gathered her most valuable instruments, including the precious telescope, and secured them to Preston's horse. The wounded bandits were in no condition to cause trouble, but Preston kept his gun close as they prepared to leave. "Can you ride?" he asked, nodding toward his horse. "Yes, though it has been a while," Amelia admitted. "You will ride in front. I will handle the reins." Preston helped her mount, then swung up behind her. His arms came around her to grasp the reins, and Amelia felt her face flush at the intimacy of the position. She could feel the warmth of his chest against her back, the solid strength of him. They rode at a steady pace toward Miles City, leading the bandits on foot with ropes tied to the saddle. Preston kept one hand on the reins and the other on his rifle, scanning the darkening landscape constantly. Amelia tried to focus on the emerging stars rather than the way his breath stirred her hair or how safe she felt despite the recent danger. "What brings a doctor all the way out here?" Preston asked after a while, his voice quiet in the growing darkness. "I am a doctor of astronomy," Amelia explained. "I study the stars and planets. There is a meteor shower predicted for next week, and the conditions here are ideal for observation. The clear air, the lack of artificial light, the altitude, it is perfect." "Studying stars," Preston said, and she could hear the curiosity in his voice. "That must be something. Most folks I know are too busy worrying about what is happening on the ground to look up much." "That is precisely why I love it," Amelia said, feeling herself relax slightly. "When you look at the stars, you realize how vast the universe is. Our earthly troubles seem smaller somehow. The same stars we see tonight shone down on ancient civilizations thousands of years ago. They will still be shining long after we are gone." Preston was quiet for a moment. "Never thought of it that way. Sounds lonely, though, looking at something so far away." "Sometimes," Amelia admitted, "but there is beauty in it too, a sense of connection to something greater than ourselves." They rode in companionable silence for a while, and Amelia found herself acutely aware of every place their bodies touched. She had dedicated her life to science, to rational thought and careful observation. She had never had time for romance, never felt the pull of attraction that other women seemed to experience so easily. But something about this quiet cowboy made her pulse race in a way that had nothing to do with fear or exertion. Miles City came into view as the last light faded from the sky. The town was small but bustling, having grown up around the military fort and the cattle trade. Oil lamps glowed in windows, and the sound of a piano drifted from one of the saloons. Preston guided his horse straight to the sheriff's office, where a middle-aged man with a silver star sat on the porch, smoking a pipe. "Preston," the sheriff said, standing quickly when he saw them. "What have you got there?" "Two of the Garrett gang," Preston replied, helping Amelia down from the horse. "They were attacking this lady out in the canyon. The third one got away." The sheriff's face darkened. "The The Garrett gang has been causing trouble for months. We will get these two to the doctor and locked up." "You did good work, Preston." He turned to Amelia. "Are you hurt, madam?" "No, thanks to Mr. Parker," Amelia said, "but I left most of my equipment at my camp. Mr. Parker said we could retrieve it tomorrow." "I will send some deputies out with you," the sheriff promised. "Those bandits will not bother you again. I guarantee it." Preston stayed with Amelia as the sheriff took charge of the prisoners, calling for help to get them to the local doctor. The streets were busy with evening activity, and Amelia became aware of the curious stares they were attracting. She must look a fright, covered in dust and with her hair falling from its pins. "Let me walk you to the hotel," Preston offered. "Make sure you get there safely." "You have done more than enough already," Amelia protested, though secretly she was glad for his continued presence. "My mama would have my hide if she knew I left a lady alone after what you just went through," Preston said with a slight smile. "It is no trouble." They walked through the lamplit streets, Preston leading his horse with one hand and carrying her telescope case in the other. Amelia noticed how people greeted him warmly, clearly knowing and respecting him. He returned their greetings politely but did not stop to talk, focused on getting her safely to her destination. The Grand Hotel was a two-story building that was probably the finest establishment in town, which was not saying much by Boston standards. But Amelia had grown to appreciate its clean rooms and friendly staff during her 2 weeks in Miles City. "This is me," she said when they reached the front steps. "Thank you again, Mr. Parker. I truly do not know how to repay you." "No need for repayment," Preston said, handing her the telescope case. "Just glad I happened to be riding by. You will be all right now." "Yes, I think so." Amelia hesitated, not quite ready for this strange evening to end. "Would you? Perhaps you would join me for breakfast tomorrow before we go to retrieve my equipment. I would like to properly thank you." Preston looked surprised, then pleased. "I would like that, madam. What time?" 7 o'clock. In the hotel dining room. I will be here." He tipped his hat to her, that same slight smile on his face. "Get some rest, Dr. Sterling. It has been quite a day." Amelia watched him ride away, leading his horse toward the livery stable at the end of the street. Only when he disappeared from view did she finally go inside, her heart still racing in a way that had everything to do with Preston Parker and nothing to do with bandits. Her room was small but comfortable, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a desk where she had been working on her calculations. Amelia set down the telescope case carefully, then sank onto the bed, suddenly exhausted. Her hands were shaking as the adrenaline finally wore off. She could have died tonight. If Preston had not come along when he did, those bandits would have robbed her and possibly worse. But he had come along. And now she could not stop thinking about the way his arms had felt around her on the horse, the quiet strength in his voice, the concern in his gray eyes. Amelia shook her head, trying to clear her thoughts. She was being ridiculous. She was 26 years old, a respected scientist, not some silly girl who lost her head over the first handsome man who showed her kindness. She had work to do, observations to make. She could not afford distractions. But as she prepared for bed and lay staring at the ceiling, she found her mind returning again and again to Preston Parker. She wondered what his life was like on the ranch, what had brought him to this wild territory, what dreams he carried in his heart. The stars visible through her window seemed to wink knowingly, and Amelia sighed. Perhaps just this once, she would allow herself to look at something other than the distant heavens. Perhaps there was something worth studying right here on Earth. The next morning dawned clear and bright, the Montana sky a brilliant blue that seemed to stretch forever. Amelia dressed carefully in her most practical traveling clothes, a navy blue skirt and white blouse that would survive another trip to the canyon. She pinned her dark brown hair back securely and studied herself in the small mirror. Her green eyes looked brighter than usual, and there was color in her cheeks that had nothing to do with sun exposure. "You are being absurd," she told her reflection firmly. "This is merely a polite breakfast with the man who saved your life. Nothing more." But her heart beat faster as she descended the stairs to the dining room, and when she saw Preston already waiting at a table by the window, clean-shaven and wearing a fresh shirt, she could not help the smile that spread across her face. He stood immediately when he saw her, pulling out a chair. "Good morning, Dr. Sterling. I hope you slept well. Please call me Amelia," she said, taking the offered seat. "And I slept surprisingly well considering. You look well rested yourself." "I am used to early mornings," Preston said, settling back into his own chair. "Ranch life starts before dawn most days." A matronly woman came to take their order, and Preston recommended the biscuits and gravy, which he swore were the best in Montana. Amelia ordered them along with coffee, and they settled into an easy conversation while waiting for the food. "Tell me about this ranch you work at," Amelia said. "Have you been there long?" "About 5 years now," Preston replied. "I came out from Kansas after my father died. My brother took over the family farm, and I wanted to see more of the country. Ended up in Miles City with $1 in my pocket and no particular skills besides being able to stay on a horse. The owner of the double bar, Mr. Harrison, took a chance on me. Been there ever since." "You enjoy the work?" Preston considered the question. "It is hard work, but good work. There is something satisfying about it, you know. Taking care of the cattle, maintaining the land, building something lasting. Mr. Harrison treats his men fair, and the other ranch hands are decent fellows. I have saved up a fair amount of money. Been thinking about maybe buying my own place someday." "That is quite ambitious," Amelia said, impressed. "It must take considerable savings to purchase a ranch." "It does," Preston admitted, "but I am patient, and I learned early that if you want something, you have to work for it. Nobody is going to hand you anything in this life." Their food arrived, and Amelia discovered that Preston had not exaggerated about the biscuits. They were fluffy and delicious, the gravy rich and savory. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Preston spoke again. "What about you? How does a woman become a doctor of astronomy?" Amelia smiled, used to this question. "My father was an astronomer at Harvard University. I grew up surrounded by telescopes and star charts. Most little girls dream of pretty dresses and fairy tale princes, but I dreamed of discovering comets and mapping the heavens. My father encouraged my interest, which was unusual. Most men think women have no aptitude for science. You miss it. Harvard, I mean, and being back east." "Sometimes," Amelia said honestly. "But the scientific community there is quite rigid. They published my papers but would not allow me to teach or lecture because I am a woman. I decided that if I could not participate in academia, I would pursue my own research. That led me here." "Well, their loss is Montana's gain," Preston said, and the sincerity in his voice made Amelia's heart flutter. After breakfast, they met Sheriff Taylor and 2 deputies at the stable, where a wagon had been prepared for retrieving Amelia's equipment. The ride back to the canyon took about an hour, and Amelia found herself seated next to Preston on the wagon bench while the deputies rode alongside on horseback. "Have those bandits said anything useful?" Preston asked the sheriff. "Nothing we did not already know," Sheriff Taylor replied. "They are part of a larger gang operating out of the Badlands. We have been trying to track them down for months. The one who got away, their leader Jake Garrett, is wanted in 3 territories, mean as a snake and twice as slippery." "Will he come back for his men?" Amelia asked, concerned. "Not likely," the sheriff said. "Men like that do not risk themselves for others. He will just recruit new followers and keep causing trouble elsewhere. They reached Amelia's campsite without incident, finding everything exactly as they had left it. In the daylight, Amelia could see the evidence of the previous evening's violence. Bullet holes in the rocks, scuff marks from the fight, drops of blood on the dusty ground. She shuddered, realizing again how close she had come to disaster. Preston noticed her reaction and moved closer. "It is over now. You are safe." Together, they loaded her equipment into the wagon. Amelia had brought an impressive array of instruments from Boston, including a large refracting telescope, several smaller observation tools, notebooks full of calculations, and camping gear designed for extended stays in remote locations. Preston handled everything with care, asking questions about what each piece of equipment did. "So this telescope," he said, examining the brass tube carefully. "You point it at the sky and it makes distant things look closer." "Exactly," Amelia said, pleased by his interest. "The lenses inside magnify the light from stars and planets, allowing us to see details invisible to the naked eye. With this telescope, I can observe the moons of Jupiter, the rings of Saturn, nebulae and galaxies millions of miles away." "Millions of miles," Preston repeated, wonder in his voice. "Hard to even imagine that. And you can see all that from right here." "I can. Would you like me to show you? Perhaps tonight if the weather holds clear." The words were out before Amelia could think better of them, but Preston's face lit up with genuine enthusiasm. "I would like that very much. I have to work until sundown, but I could ride into town after, if you are sure you do not mind." "I insist," Amelia said firmly. "It is the least I can do after you saved my life." They finished loading the wagon and headed back to Miles City. The deputies rode ahead to scout for trouble, but the journey was peaceful. The Montana landscape stretched endlessly in all directions, broken by rocky outcroppings and the occasional stand of cottonwood trees near a creek. Hawks circled overhead and prairie dogs chattered from their burrows as the wagon passed. "It is beautiful here," Amelia said, studying the vast sky. "So different from Boston. There you are always surrounded by buildings and people. Here you can see forever." "It gets lonely sometimes," Preston admitted. "But yeah, there is something special about this land. It is wild and hard, but honest too. You know where you stand." They talked easily for the rest of the journey, discovering surprising common ground despite their different backgrounds. Both had lost their fathers, both valued independence and hard work. Both had dreams that extended beyond their current circumstances. By the time they reached Miles City, Amelia felt as if she had known Preston for years rather than hours. The equipment was stored safely in a spare room at the hotel, and Sheriff Taylor promised to have men patrol the area regularly to prevent further trouble. Preston had to return to the ranch for his afternoon work, but he promised to come back that evening. "Around 8 o'clock, he suggested. "Should be full dark by then, good for star watching." "Perfect," Amelia agreed. "I will set up the telescope behind the hotel. There is a clear area there with a good view of the sky." Preston tipped his hat to her, that slight smile playing at his lips again. "Looking forward to it, Amelia." She watched him ride away, ignoring the knowing looks from the hotel staff. Let them gossip if they wanted. For the first time in years, Amelia felt excited about something beyond her research. She felt alive in a way that had nothing to do with scientific discovery, and everything to do with a quiet cowboy with gray eyes and strong hands. The afternoon passed slowly as Amelia prepared for the evening. She carefully set up her telescope in the cleared area behind the hotel, adjusting and calibrating the instrument. She reviewed her star charts and calculations, planning what she would show Preston. The meteor shower was still days away, but there were plenty of other celestial wonders to observe on a clear Montana night. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Amelia found herself checking her reflection in every window she passed. She had changed into a different dress, deep green to match her eyes, and let her hair fall in soft waves down her back rather than pinning it up in her usual severe style. She told herself it was simply because she was no longer working, but she knew better. 8 o'clock came and went with no sign of Preston. Amelia tried not to feel disappointed. He was probably just delayed at the ranch. Ranch work did not operate on a strict schedule. There were always unexpected tasks that needed attention. But when 8:30 arrived and he still had not appeared, worry began to replace disappointment. What if something had happened? What if Jake Garrett had come back seeking revenge? What if Preston had been hurt? She was about to go inside and ask if anyone had seen him when she heard the sound of hoofbeats. Preston rode into view, dismounting quickly and striding toward her with an apologetic expression. "I am so sorry," he said breathlessly. "One of the Kevs got caught in a ravine and it took 6 of us to get the poor thing out. I came as fast as I could." Relief flooded through Amelia. "It is fine. I was just worried something had happened to you." "You were worried about me?" Preston seemed surprised, then pleased. "That is kind of you." "Well, you did save my life," Amelia said, trying to sound casual. "It would be rather inconvenient if you went and got yourself hurt now." Preston laughed, a warm sound that made Amelia's heart skip. "Would not want to inconvenience you." "So, are you going to show me these stars or what?" Amelia gestured to the telescope, which was already pointed at a promising section of sky. "Look through here," she instructed, adjusting the focus slightly. "Tell me what you see." Preston bent to look through the eyepiece, and Amelia heard his sharp intake of breath. "Is that Saturn? With the rings?" "It is," Amelia confirmed, delighted by his reaction. "You are looking at a planet nearly 800 million miles away." "This is incredible," Preston said, his eye still pressed to the telescope. "I can see the gaps in the rings. And is that a moon?" "One of several. Saturn has many moons, though we have not identified all of them yet." Amelia moved to his side, pointing at the telescope. "That bright spot there is Titan, the largest moon. It is bigger than some planets." They spent the next hour exploring the night sky together. Amelia showed Preston Jupiter and its 4 largest moons, the Andromeda Galaxy, the double star Albireo with its contrasting colors, and the magnificent globular cluster in Hercules. With each new sight, Preston's enthusiasm grew, and Amelia found herself seeing the heavens through fresh eyes, remembering the wonder that had drawn her to astronomy in the first place. "How do you keep track of it all?" Preston asked as they took a break, sitting on a bench near the telescope. "There must be thousands of stars visible." "Millions," Amelia corrected. "And those are just the ones we can see. There are billions more beyond the range of even our best telescopes. Astronomers create maps and catalogs, tracking the positions and movements of celestial objects. It is painstaking work, but incredibly rewarding." Preston looked up at the sky, and the starlight reflected in his eyes. "Makes you feel pretty small, does not it, looking at all that?" "In the best possible way," Amelia agreed. "We are part of something vast and mysterious and beautiful. When I look at the stars, I feel connected to everyone who has ever looked up and wondered. Ancient sailors navigating by the North Star, philosophers pondering our place in the cosmos, lovers making wishes on falling stars." She had not meant to say that last part, and she felt her cheeks warm. But Preston turned to look at her, his expression soft in the darkness. "That is poetry," he said quietly. "You talk about science, but what you really do is find beauty in the universe." No one had ever described her work quite that way, and Amelia found herself blinking back unexpected tears. That is exactly it. Beauty and truth together. The universe follows mathematical laws, perfect and precise, but those laws create such incredible splendor. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, and Amelia was acutely aware of how close Preston was sitting, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body in the cool night air. "Can I tell you something?" Preston said suddenly. "I have been thinking about you all day. About how brave you were yesterday, not giving up even when those bandits had you cornered. About how your whole face lights up when you talk about the stars. About how different you are from anyone I have ever met." Amelia's breath caught. "Preston, I know you are probably leaving Montana soon," he continued. "Going back east or on to your next research location. And I know I am just a ranch hand with dirt under his fingernails and nothing much to offer someone like you. But I wanted you to know that meeting you has meant something to me. Something important." Amelia turned to face him fully, her heart pounding. "You are not just anything, Preston Parker. You are kind and brave and thoughtful. You saved my life without expecting anything in return. You treat my work with respect instead of condescension. She took a breath. "You make me feel things I have never felt before." Preston reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered on her cheek, and Amelia leaned into his touch. "What kind of things?" he asked softly. "Like maybe the most interesting discoveries are not always in the sky," Amelia whispered. "Like maybe I have been looking in the wrong direction all along." Preston leaned closer, his eyes searching hers. "May I kiss you, Amelia?" Instead of answering, Amelia closed the remaining distance between them. Their lips met gently at first, tentative. But then Preston's hand slid into her hair and Amelia's arms went around his neck, and the kiss deepened into something that made her forget about stars and science, and everything except the feeling of his mouth on hers. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Preston rested his forehead against hers. "I am falling for you, Amelia Sterling. I know it is too fast and makes no sense, but it is the truth." "I am falling for you too," Amelia admitted. "And you are right, it makes no sense at all. But somehow it feels like the most logical thing in the world." They kissed again, longer this time, and when they finally separated, they were both smiling like fools. Preston pulled Amelia close, wrapping his arms around her, and she rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "What are we going to do?" she asked quietly. "I came here to work and you have responsibilities at the ranch. This is complicated." "Maybe it does not have to be," Preston said. "How long are you planning to stay in Miles City?" "At least another month. I need to observe and document the meteor shower, and there are other phenomena I want to study after that." Amelia trailed off. She had not made concrete plans beyond this research trip. "Then we have a month," Preston said firmly. "A month to figure this out, to see where this goes. I can ride into town most evenings after work. You can come out to the ranch on your free days. We will make it work." "What if a month is not enough?" Amelia asked. "What if I do not want to leave at the end of it?" Preston pulled back to look at her, hope shining in his eyes. "Are you saying you might want to stay in Montana?" "I do not know," Amelia said honestly. "I have never considered settling in one place before. My work has always required travel, but the thought of leaving you—" She paused, surprised by the intensity of her own feelings. "I cannot imagine it." "Then do not think about it tonight," Preston said, kissing her forehead. "Let's just take this one day at a time. No decisions, no pressure. Just you and me and these stars." Amelia nodded, settling back into his embrace. They stayed like that for a long time, talking quietly about everything and nothing. Preston told her about growing up on a farm in Kansas, about his mother who had passed when he was young, about his dreams of owning land where he could build something permanent. Amelia told him about her isolated childhood among academics, about the challenges of being a woman in a male-dominated field, about the sense of purpose her father's death had given her. The night grew late, and eventually Preston walked Amelia to the hotel's back door. They kissed goodnight slowly, reluctant to part, and made plans to see each other the following evening. "Same time, same place?" Preston asked, still holding her hand. "I will be here," Amelia promised. She watched from her window as he rode away, his figure growing smaller against the starlit landscape until he disappeared into the darkness. Only then did she prepare for bed, her mind whirling with everything that had happened. She had come to Montana searching for celestial phenomena, for data to support her theories about meteor composition and trajectory. She had not expected to find a connection more powerful than gravity, more luminous than any star. But as she drifted off to sleep, Preston's face filled her dreams, and for the first time in her adult life, Amelia found herself hoping that the universe had plans for her beyond her work. The following days fell into a rhythm that felt both natural and thrilling. Amelia spent her days working on calculations and observations, documenting the sky conditions and preparing for the upcoming meteor shower. She wrote letters to her colleagues back east, carefully omitting any mention of Preston, knowing they would not understand. In the evenings, Preston would arrive like clockwork, freshly washed from his day's work, ready to spend every possible moment with her. Sometimes they would use the telescope, and Amelia would teach him about constellations and planets. Other times they would simply walk through town or sit talking until the hotel staff began pointedly closing up for the night. On her fourth day in Miles City, since the bandit attack, Preston invited Amelia to visit the Double Bar Ranch. He borrowed a wagon from the livery so she would not have to ride horseback, and they set out early on a Sunday morning when he had the day off. The ranch was larger than Amelia had expected, sprawling across a valley with the mountains rising in the distance. The main house was a sturdy log structure with a covered porch, and several outbuildings dotted the property. Cattle grazed peacefully in the pastures, and Amelia could see ranch hands moving about their work even on the day of rest. "This is beautiful," Amelia said as Preston helped her down from the wagon. "Wait until you see the view from the ridge," Preston promised. "On a clear day you can see for 50 miles. He introduced her to Mr. Harrison, the ranch owner, a weathered man in his 60s with kind eyes and a firm handshake. "So you are the lady Astronomer Preston has been talking about non-stop," Mr. Harrison said with a knowing smile. "Welcome to the Double Bar, Dr. Sterling. Any friend of Preston's is welcome here." They spent the day exploring the ranch. Preston showed her the cattle operation, explaining the work involved in running a successful ranch. He introduced her to the other hands, who treated her with polite curiosity. She could tell they were surprised that their usually quiet colleague had brought a woman to the ranch, but they were respectful and friendly. For lunch, the ranch cook, an older woman named Martha, prepared a feast. As they ate with Mr. Harrison and some of the other ranch hands, Amelia felt surprisingly at home. These were working people, practical and straightforward, so different from the academics she usually associated with. Yet they accepted her presence without judgment, listening with genuine interest when she talked about her work. After lunch, Preston took her riding. He had borrowed a gentle mare for her, and they rode up to the ridge he had mentioned. The view was indeed spectacular, the landscape stretching endlessly under the vast blue sky. They dismounted and sat on a flat rock, and Preston wrapped his arm around Amelia's shoulders. "I have been thinking," he said carefully, "about what you said the other night. About maybe not wanting to leave Montana." Amelia's heart sped up. "Yes, Mr. Harrison has been after me for a year to take on more responsibility here. He wants to make me foreman, but I have been holding back because I was not sure I wanted to commit to staying long term. I like the double bar, but I have always had this feeling that I was meant for something more than just working for someone else." "What changed?" Amelia asked, though she thought she knew. "You," Preston said simply. "Meeting you made me realize that maybe what I was waiting for was not a place, but a person. Someone to build a life with. The ranch is good work, and with a foreman's wages, I could save faster for my own place. If you decided to stay, I mean. If this thing between us is as real as it feels." Amelia's eyes burned with tears. "It feels very real to me." "Then stay," Preston said, turning to face her. "I know it is asking a lot. You have your work, your life back east. But Montana has universities too, and observatories, and miles of clear, dark sky for your research. And you would have me for whatever that is worth." "It is worth everything," Amelia whispered. "But Preston, I need to be honest with you. I have offers to present my research at conferences in Europe next year. I have commitments, people counting on me. I cannot just abandon my work." "I am not asking you to abandon anything," Preston said firmly. "I am asking you to consider making Montana your home base. You could still travel for your research, attend your conferences. I would not want you to give up your dreams. I just want to be part of them." Amelia kissed him, pouring all her confused emotions into it. She had never imagined this possibility, never thought she could have both her work and a real relationship. In her experience, men expected women to choose. But Preston was offering her something different, something that honored both sides of her identity. "Let me finish this research project," she said when they broke apart. "Let me see you through to the meteor shower and complete my observations. Then we can talk seriously about the future. I need time to think, to make plans." "That is all I am asking," Preston said, relief clear in his voice. "Time. Because I think if you give us a real chance, you will find that we fit together just right." They stayed on the ridge until the sun began to set, talking about possibilities and dreams. Preston described his vision for his own ranch someday, a place where he could raise cattle and horses, build a home, create something lasting. Amelia talked about her hope to establish an observatory in the West, where the clear skies would allow for research impossible in the more populated East. By the time they returned to the ranch house, Amelia's mind was whirling with possibilities. Could she really build a life here? It seemed impossible, yet also somehow inevitable. The connection she felt to Preston grew stronger with each passing day, and the thought of returning to Boston without him made her chest ache. That night, as Preston drove her back to Miles City in the wagon, he reached over and took her hand. "Whatever you decide, I want you to know something. Meeting you has changed me. Even if you leave and I never see you again, you have shown me that there is more to life than just work and duty. You have shown me beauty and wonder and possibility. I will always be grateful for that." "You are not going to lose me that easily," Amelia said, squeezing his hand. "I am not going anywhere for at least a month, remember? You are stuck with me." "Best news I have heard all day," Preston said with a grin. The weeks that followed were among the happiest of Amelia's life. She threw herself into her work during the days, making detailed observations and calculations. The meteor shower was approaching, and she needed to be ready to document it properly. But the evenings belonged to Preston, and she found herself living for those hours when he would arrive, sweeping her into his arms and making her forget about everything except the feeling of being loved. Because that was what this was, she realized. Love. She had fallen completely and irrevocably in love with Preston Parker, and the knowledge both thrilled and terrified her. They were careful about propriety, always meeting in public places or with others nearby. Miles City was a small town, and gossip traveled fast. But everyone could see the way Preston looked at Amelia, the way she lit up when he entered a room. The townspeople began to smile knowingly when they saw them together, and more than one well-meaning lady made pointed comments about how nice it would be to have a learned woman like Dr. Sterling settle in Montana. The night of the meteor shower arrived with perfect conditions. Clear skies, no moon, and just enough chill in the air to keep the atmosphere stable. Amelia had set up her equipment on a hill outside town, where she would have an unobstructed view of the sky. Preston helped her prepare, learning to adjust the telescope and record observations in her notebooks. "You are a natural assistant," Amelia told him as he carefully wrote down her dictated measurements. "You should consider a career in astronomy." "I think I will stick to cattle," Preston said with a laugh, "but I am happy to help you with your work anytime." As darkness fell, they settled in to wait. The meteors would not begin in earnest until after midnight, so they had hours to spend together under the stars. Preston had brought a thick blanket, and they wrapped up together against the cold, talking quietly while watching the sky. "Tell me something you have never told anyone else," Preston said suddenly. Amelia thought for a moment. "Sometimes I am afraid that I am too much like my father. He was brilliant and passionate about his work, but he was also distant and difficult. He never remarried after my mother died, never let anyone get close. I worry that I have inherited that coldness, that inability to truly connect with others." "You are not cold," Preston said firmly. "You are careful with your heart, and that is not the same thing. You open up to people who deserve it, who take the time to see who you really are. That is not a flaw." "What about you?" Amelia asked. "What is something you have never told anyone?" Preston was quiet for a long moment. "I am afraid of being ordinary, of spending my whole life working for someone else, living in a bunkhouse, never building anything that lasts. My father was a good man, but he died with nothing to show for it except a small farm that my brother promptly sold. I do not want that. I want to matter somehow." "You matter to me," Amelia said softly, "more than you know." "You matter to me too," Preston replied. "In fact, He paused, seeming to gather his courage. "I love you, Amelia. I know it is fast, and maybe I am a fool for saying it, but it is true." Amelia's breath caught. She had known her own feelings for days, but had been afraid to voice them, afraid of the changes such an admission would require. But hearing Preston say the words first gave her courage. "I love you too," she whispered. "I love you so much it scares me." Preston cupped her face in his hands and kissed her deeply. They stayed like that for a long moment, wrapped in each other's arms, the vast universe spinning silently above them. Then the first meteor streaked across the sky, and Amelia gasped, pulling away to look up. Then another and another, until the heavens were alive with falling stars. She scrambled for her notebook, trying to document what she was seeing while Preston watched in awe. "This is incredible," he breathed. "There must be hundreds of them." "The Earth is passing through a debris field left by a comet," Amelia explained even as she scribbled notes. "The particles burn up in our atmosphere, creating these streaks of light. It happens every year at this time, but some years the display is more intense than others." They spent hours watching and recording the meteor shower. Preston proved to be an excellent assistant, keeping careful time records and making observations when Amelia was busy with the telescope. They worked together seamlessly, and Amelia realized this was what she wanted. Not just Preston's love, but his partnership, his support in her work. As dawn began to break, the meteor shower faded, and Amelia closed her notebooks with satisfaction. She had collected excellent data, observations that would contribute to her research on meteor composition and origins. But more importantly, she had shared the experience with someone who understood its significance, who saw the beauty in what she was trying to accomplish. "That was the most amazing night of my life," Preston said as they packed up the equipment. "Thank you for sharing it with me." "Thank you for being here," Amelia replied, "for caring about something that matters to me." They loaded the wagon and headed back to town as the sun rose, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Amelia leaned against Preston's shoulder, exhausted but happy. "I have decided," she said suddenly. Preston glanced at her. "Decided what?" "I am staying in Montana. Not forever necessarily, but I want to make this my home base, at least for a while. I can write to the university in Missoula, see if they need someone to teach astronomy. I can continue my research from here and travel when necessary for conferences. But I want to stay. With you." Preston pulled the wagon to a stop, turning to look at her with wonder in his eyes. "Are you sure? I do not want you to give up opportunities for me." "I am not giving up anything," Amelia said firmly. "I am gaining something. A home, a partner, a life beyond just my work. My father devoted everything to astronomy and he died alone and unhappy. I do not want that for myself. I want to be brilliant and accomplished and also deeply, wonderfully in love. And I think I can have both if I am brave enough to try." Preston kissed her then, deep and passionate, and Amelia knew she had made the right choice. The universe was vast and full of wonders, but the greatest wonder of all was finding someone who saw her truly and loved her completely. "I will build you an observatory," Preston promised. "When I get my own land, I will make sure there is a place for your telescopes and research. You will have everything you need." "I already have everything I need," Amelia said. "I have you." They returned to Miles City as the town was waking up, and Preston walked Amelia to the hotel one last time, because now everything was different. Now they had a future to plan, a life to build together. "I need to talk to Mr. Harrison today," Preston said. "Tell him I am ready to take that foreman position. The extra wages will help us save faster. And I need to send some telegrams," Amelia added. "Let my colleagues know I am extending my stay indefinitely. They will be shocked." "Let them be shocked," Preston said with a grin. "The famous Dr. Sterling choosing a cowboy over the academic world. It will be quite a scandal." "The famous Dr. Sterling is choosing love," Amelia corrected. "And that is never scandalous. It is the sanest thing I have ever done." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Amelia wrote to the University of Montana and was thrilled to receive an invitation to give a series of lectures on astronomy. It was not a permanent position, but it was a start, and it would provide income while she continued her research. She also arranged to have some of her belongings shipped from Boston, including more books and equipment. Preston did indeed accept the foreman position, which came with a significant raise and a small house on the ranch property instead of a bunk in the shared quarters. He threw himself into his new responsibilities with characteristic determination, and Amelia could see how much he thrived with the additional authority and trust. They began making plans for the future. Preston was adamant that they do things properly, which meant marriage before she moved out to the ranch. Amelia had no objections, though the idea of getting married still felt surreal. She had never imagined herself as someone's wife, had never thought she would want that traditional life. But with Preston, everything was different. He did not want to change her or limit her. He wanted to support her dreams while building his own. It was a partnership in the truest sense, and Amelia found herself excited about their future in a way she had never been about any research project or academic achievement. 2 months after the night, Preston saved her from bandits. On a crisp October afternoon, they were married by the local minister in a simple ceremony at the church in Miles City. Mr. Harrison stood up as Preston's best man, and the hotel owner's wife, who had become a good friend to Amelia, served as her witness. The church was packed with townspeople who had grown fond of the unusual couple, the learned astronomer and the quiet cowboy who had found love under Montana's vast sky. Amelia wore a simple white dress that she had purchased in town, her dark hair adorned with wildflowers. Preston wore his best suit, looking handsome and nervous as he waited at the altar. When Amelia walked down the aisle, his face transformed with such joy and love that several people in the congregation dabbed at their eyes. The ceremony was brief but meaningful. When Preston slipped the gold ring onto Amelia's finger and promised to love and honor her for all his days, his voice was steady and sure. When Amelia repeated her own vows, she felt the truth of them in her bones. This was right. This was exactly where she was meant to be. "You may kiss your bride," the minister said with a smile, and Preston did, deeply and thoroughly, to the applause and laughter of their gathered friends. The reception was held at the hotel, a joyous affair with food and music and dancing. Amelia had never been much of a dancer, but Preston led her through the steps with patience, and she found herself laughing as they spun around the floor. "Mrs. Parker," Preston said, testing out the name. "How does that sound? Like home?" Amelia replied. "Though I think I will continue to publish under Sterling for my professional work. Dr. Amelia Sterling Parker is rather a mouthful." "You can be called anything you want," Preston said, "as long as you are mine." As the sun set on their wedding day, Preston and Amelia climbed into a wagon decorated with flowers and ribbons and headed toward the ranch that would be their new home. The small house Preston had been given as foreman had been cleaned and furnished, a wedding gift from Mr. Harrison and the ranch hands. It was modest but comfortable, with 2 rooms downstairs and a sleeping loft above. But the real surprise was behind the house. Preston had spent every spare moment of the past month building a small observatory, a wooden structure with a roof that could slide open to expose the sky. Inside, he had installed a platform for Amelia's telescope and a desk for her notebooks. "It is not much," he said as he showed it to her, suddenly shy. "Nothing like what you are used to, but I thought you should have a place for your work." Amelia was crying as she stepped inside, running her hands over the carefully constructed platform. "It is perfect." "Preston, this is the most thoughtful gift anyone has ever given me." "You gave up a lot to be here," Preston said. "I want you to know that your work matters, that I support it completely." Amelia threw her arms around him. "I did not give up anything. I found everything." They made love that night in their marriage bed with a tenderness that brought tears to both their eyes. Afterward, they lay tangled together, talking softly about their dreams and plans. Preston wanted to save enough to buy his own ranch within 5 years. Amelia wanted to establish a reputation as the premier astronomer in the Montana Territory. Together, they would build a life that honored both their ambitions. The first year of their marriage was not without challenges. Ranch life was demanding, and there were times when Preston came home too exhausted to do more than eat and sleep. Amelia's teaching schedule at the university required her to be away in Missoula for days at a time, leaving Preston to manage without her. They had to learn to balance their individual goals with their commitment to each other, but they made it work. On clear nights, Preston would join Amelia in the observatory, and she would show him her latest discoveries. On difficult days, When Amelia struggled with condescending colleagues or Preston dealt with setbacks at the ranch, they supported each other with patience and love. The following spring, Amelia discovered she was pregnant. The news filled her with a complex mix of emotions. She had never particularly imagined herself as a mother, had always assumed her work would be her legacy. But seeing Preston's face light up with joy when she told him, she found herself excited about this new adventure. "A baby," Preston kept saying, shaking his head in wonder. "We are going to have a baby." "Are you happy?" Amelia asked, needing reassurance. "Happy does not begin to cover it," Preston said, placing his hand gently on her still flat stomach. "I am terrified and thrilled and so grateful. Thank you, Amelia. Thank you for giving me everything." The pregnancy was difficult at times. Amelia suffered from morning sickness well into her second trimester, and the physical changes frustrated her when they interfered with her work. But Preston was endlessly patient, taking over household tasks and making sure she rested. "You are growing a human being," he reminded her when she complained about having to cut back on her research hours. "That is more important than any star chart." "Both are important," Amelia insisted. "I refuse to become one of those women who loses herself entirely in motherhood." "You could never lose yourself," Preston assured her, "but maybe you are being called to expand yourself, to be more than you were before." He was right, of course. As her body changed and grew, Amelia found herself thinking differently about her work and her life. She had always been focused on discovery, on being the first to observe and document celestial phenomena. But now she thought about teaching, about passing on her knowledge and passion to the next generation. Her lectures at the university became more important to her, and she began developing a curriculum for a full astronomy program. On a hot August night in 1885, Amelia went into labor. The birth was long and difficult, and there were moments when she wondered if she would survive it. But Preston stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand and whispering encouragement, and finally, just as dawn broke, their son entered the world with a lusty cry. "A boy," the midwife announced, placing the baby in Amelia's arms. "A healthy, beautiful boy." Amelia looked down at her son's red, wrinkled face and felt her heart expand in a way she had not known was possible. This tiny person was part of her, part of Preston, a miracle more wondrous than any constellation. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "Welcome to the universe." Preston leaned over them, tears streaming down his face as he gently touched the baby's small hand. "He is perfect. You are both perfect." They named him Thomas after Amelia's father, with the middle name James after Preston's. Thomas Parker proved to be a content baby, sleeping well and crying only when hungry or uncomfortable. Amelia threw herself into motherhood with the same intensity she brought to everything else, reading every book on child development she could find and approaching nursing and care with scientific precision. But it was Preston who was the natural parent. He had infinite patience for Thomas's cries, infinite gentleness in handling the fragile infant. He would rock his son for hours, singing old cowboy songs in his low voice, and Thomas would gaze up at his father with wide, wondering eyes. "You are so good at this," Amelia said one night, watching Preston change Thomas's diaper with practiced ease. "I've handled newborn calves," Preston joked. "Not that different, really." "It is more than that," Amelia insisted. "You have such a gift for nurturing. Our son is lucky to have you." "He is lucky to have us both," Preston corrected. "You are teaching him to see beauty in the world, to question and explore and never stop learning. That is just as important as anything I do." As Thomas grew from infant to toddler, Amelia and Preston settled into their roles as parents while continuing to pursue their individual goals. Amelia had to reduce her teaching load at the university, but she continued her research and published several well-received papers on meteor composition. Preston saved diligently, and by Thomas's second birthday, he had enough for a down payment on a small ranch 20 miles from the Double Bar. The property was modest, just a few hundred acres with a small house and barn, but it had potential. Preston could see what it could become, and Amelia trusted his vision. They moved in the spring of 1887 and immediately began the work of building their dream. Preston spent his days managing the cattle operation and making improvements to the property. Amelia divided her time between caring for Thomas, her astronomical research, and helping with the ranch work. She learned to cook and clean more efficiently, to tend a garden, to help with the cattle when extra hands were needed. She was not particularly skilled at domestic tasks, but she was determined, and gradually she became competent. The observatory Preston had built at the Double Bar was carefully dismantled and rebuilt at their new home, positioned on a hill with perfect sight lines to the sky. On clear nights after Thomas was asleep, Amelia and Preston would go up to the observatory together. Sometimes they would make observations. Other times they would simply sit wrapped in each other's arms, looking at the stars that had brought them together. "You ever regret it?" Preston asked one night. "Giving up the life you could have had, the prestigious positions and research opportunities back east?" "Never," Amelia said firmly. "I have everything I want right here. A home, a family, work that matters to me. You gave me that, Preston. You showed me there was more to life than just achievement and recognition." "You gave me something too," Preston said. "Purpose and wonder. Before I met you, I was just going through the motions, working and saving but not really living. You taught me to look beyond the immediate, to dream bigger." Their second child, a daughter they named Clara, was born in the spring of 1888. She had Preston's gray eyes and Amelia's dark hair, and from the beginning she was a force of nature. Where Thomas was contemplative and gentle, Clara was bold and adventurous, climbing everything she could reach and demanding constant attention. "She is going to be a handful," the doctor said with a laugh when Clara was just a few days old and already fighting against being swaddled. "She will be magnificent," Amelia said, gazing at her daughter with fierce pride. As the children grew, Amelia found ways to integrate them into her work. Thomas, now 6 years old, loved sitting in the observatory with her, learning the names of constellations and planets. Clara, at 2, was more interested in pushing buttons and pulling levers, but Amelia patiently taught her daughter that scientific instruments required gentle handling. Preston's ranch continued to grow and prosper. He had a gift for animal husbandry, breeding strong, healthy cattle that commanded good prices at market. He also started raising horses, discovering a talent for training even the most difficult animals. Other ranchers began seeking his advice, and Preston developed a reputation as a knowledgeable and fair-dealing cattleman. In 1890, Amelia received an offer that would have been unthinkable just a few years earlier. The newly established Montana Agricultural College in Bozeman wanted to create an astronomy program and offered her the position of lead professor. It would mean more travel and responsibility, but also the chance to establish something permanent and important. She discussed it extensively with Preston, worried about how it would affect their family. But Preston, as always, supported her completely. "You should do it," he insisted. "This is what you have always wanted, a chance to build a real program and train the next generation of astronomers." "We will make it work." "But the children," Amelia protested. "Clara is only 4 and Thomas is 8. They need me." "They need a mother who is fulfilled and happy," Preston corrected. and they need to see that women can have important careers and make contributions to the world. You will be teaching them that just by pursuing your dreams. So Amelia accepted the position. It required her to be in Bozeman for extended periods during the academic year, teaching classes and advising students. Preston managed the ranch and cared for the children during her absences, and when possible, the whole family would travel to Bozeman together. It was not easy. There were times when Amelia felt torn between her responsibilities, guilty about leaving her children even though she knew Preston was a capable parent. There were times when she wondered if she was being selfish, putting her career ahead of her family. But then she would receive a letter from one of her students, thanking her for inspiring them to pursue astronomy. Or Thomas would tell her proudly that he had shown his classmates how to find the North Star. Or Clara would announce that she was going to be a scientist, just like Mama. And Amelia would remember that she was not just building a career, she was building a legacy. The years passed quickly. Thomas grew into a thoughtful teenager with his mother's love of science and his father's steady reliability. Clara became a fierce, independent girl who wanted to learn everything about everything. A third child, another son they named Peter, was born in 1893, completing their family. Preston achieved his dream of establishing one of the most successful ranches in the region. By the late 1890s, the Parker Ranch was known throughout Montana for its quality livestock and innovative practices. Preston had become a respected voice in the agricultural community, often consulted on matters of land management and animal breeding. Amelia's career flourished as well. Her astronomy program at the college grew from a handful of students to dozens, and she published numerous papers that advanced the field's understanding of meteors and comets. She became one of the few women in the country recognized as an authority in her field, frequently invited to speak at conferences and symposiums. But their greatest achievement was not professional success. It was the life they had built together, the family they had created, the love that had only deepened with time. After 18 years of marriage, Preston and Amelia were more in love than ever, still finding joy in each other's company, still supporting each other's dreams. On a clear autumn night in 1901, they sat in their observatory watching a meteor shower with their 3 children. Thomas, now 21 and preparing to attend college himself, operated the telescope with practiced skill. Clara, 15 and already talking about becoming a doctor, carefully recorded observations in a notebook. Peter, 8 years old and full of questions, bounced excitedly between his siblings. "How many do you think we will see tonight, Mama?" Peter asked. "Hundreds, if conditions hold," Amelia replied, ruffling his dark hair. "This is one of the most reliable annual showers. It is amazing that we are seeing light from particles that traveled through space for millions of years," Thomas observed. "When you think about the distances involved, the age of these materials, it really puts things in perspective." "That is exactly what your mother said to me the first night we met," Preston said, smiling at Amelia. "She taught me to see the universe differently." "Tell us again how you met," Clara begged. "About the bandits and the rescue." Amelia and Preston exchanged amused glances. The story had been told dozens of times, becoming family legend. But they never tired of sharing it, of remembering those early days when everything was new and uncertain. "Well," Preston began, "I was riding back to the ranch when I saw sunlight glinting off something in the canyon. I rode over to investigate and found your mother being attacked by bandits. And Papa saved her," Peter chimed in, having heard this part many times. "He did," Amelia confirmed. "He rode in like a hero from a dime novel, shooting and fighting until the bandits fled. I thought he was the bravest man I had ever met." And that night, Mama showed Papa the stars through her telescope. Clara continued the familiar narrative. And they fell in love. It was not quite that simple, Amelia said with a laugh. But essentially, yes. Your father saved my life, and in return I showed him the universe. Though really we saved each other. How so? Thomas asked, genuinely curious. Preston considered the question. Your mother was so focused on her work, on proving herself in a field that did not want her, that she had forgotten to actually live. And I was stuck in routine, working toward vague dreams without any real plan or purpose. We each gave the other something essential. She gave me wonder and ambition, and I gave her roots and connection. And we fell in love, Amelia added softly, reaching for Preston's hand. The rest was just details. A meteor streaked across the sky, bright and beautiful, and they all stopped to watch it. In that moment, surrounded by her family in the observatory Preston had built for her, Amelia felt a contentment so profound it brought tears to her eyes. "Are you all right, Mama?" Clara asked, noticing. "I am more than all right," Amelia said. "I am happy, truly, completely happy." Preston squeezed her hand, and she knew he understood. This was what they had built together. Not just a ranch or a career, but a life rich with love and meaning and beauty. They had created a family, raised children who were kind and curious and brave. They had supported each other through challenges and celebrated each other's successes. They had built something lasting. "You know," Preston said, "I have been thinking about that night, all those years ago. If I had not happened to ride by that canyon at that exact moment, none of this would exist. Our children, this life, everything would be different." "I prefer to think it was fate," Amelia said. "The universe aligning to bring us together. After all, what are the odds that a cowboy and an astronomer would meet in the middle of nowhere, Montana, and fall in love? Astronomically small," Thomas joked, and they all groaned at the pun. "However it happened, I am grateful," Preston said. "Every day I wake up grateful." The meteor shower continued above them, the sky alive with falling stars. Amelia thought about the line she had said to Preston, so many years ago now, when he asked if studying stars was lonely. She had said there was beauty in the distance, in the connection to something greater than themselves. But she knew now that the real beauty was not in the distant stars. It was here, in the warmth of Preston's hand in hers, in the sound of their children's laughter, in the life they had created together. The stars were magnificent, but they were cold and far away. Love was immediate and warm and real. "Thank you," Amelia whispered to Preston. "For what?" "For being the star I was searching for," she said, echoing words from their early days together. "For showing me that the most important discoveries happen right here on Earth." Preston kissed her softly, unmindful of their children's presence. "You were always the star, Amelia. I just got lucky enough to orbit you." Clara made a disgusted sound. "Parents are so embarrassing." But Thomas smiled, understanding something of what his parents shared. And Peter just looked confused, which was probably appropriate for an 8-year-old. They stayed in the observatory until late in the night, watching the meteor shower and talking about everything and nothing. When they finally headed back to the house, tired but happy, Preston and Amelia walked with their arms around each other, the way they had done for nearly 2 decades. "You remember what I said that first night?" Preston asked. "About falling for you even though it made no sense." "I remember everything about that night," Amelia replied. "I was wrong about one thing," Preston said. "It did make sense. You and me, this life, our family, it all makes perfect sense. It is the most logical thing in the world." Amelia smiled up at him, at this man who had saved her life, and then given it meaning beyond anything she had imagined possible. "You are absolutely right. Love is the most logical force in the universe." They reached the house and sent the children to bed before settling on the porch swing, neither quite ready to end the evening. The night air was cool, and Preston wrapped a blanket around both of them, pulling Amelia close. "I love our life," he said quietly. "Every single part of it. The good days and the hard days and everything in between. As long as I am with you, I am home." "We have built something beautiful," Amelia agreed. "Not just the ranch or my career, but this. Us. The family we have created, the love we share. This is my greatest accomplishment, Preston. Not any paper I have published or student I have taught, but the life we have made together." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the last of the meteors streak across the sky. After all these years, Amelia still felt the same wonder when she looked at the stars, the same sense of infinite possibility. But now she understood that wonder could exist in the everyday too, in the touch of a hand, in a child's laughter, in the quiet companionship of a long marriage. Preston had taught her that. This cowboy who had ridden into her life 18 years ago and changed everything. He had shown her that science and love were not opposing forces but complementary ones, that she could be brilliant and accomplished while also being deeply, wonderfully human. "What are you thinking about?" Preston asked. "About that day in the canyon," Amelia said. "About how terrified I was and how you appeared like some kind of miracle. I have spent my whole life studying the laws of the universe, looking for patterns and explanations for why things happen. But I cannot explain you, Preston Parker. I cannot explain why you happened to ride by at exactly the right moment, or why you risked your life for a stranger, or why you fell in love with a stubborn astronomer who did not know the first thing about being a ranch wife. Some things do not need explaining," Preston said. "Some things just are, like gravity or starlight, like love." "Like love," Amelia repeated softly. The years continued to pass, bringing new challenges and joys. Thomas did go to college, studying engineering with an emphasis on astronomy, eventually designing telescopes that advanced the field significantly. Clara became a doctor, as she had dreamed, one of the first women to practice medicine in Montana. Peter followed in his father's footsteps, taking over the management of the ranch and expanding it even further. Preston and Amelia grew old together, their hair turning silver, their bodies slowing down, but their love never diminishing. They remained partners in every sense, supporting each other through the inevitable losses and changes that came with age. When Mr. Harrison passed away, leaving the double bar to Preston in his will, they honored his memory by continuing his legacy of fair dealing and quality livestock. Amelia eventually retired from active teaching, though she continued her research well into her 70s. She published her final paper at age 73, a comprehensive study of meteor composition that was hailed as groundbreaking. At the publication ceremony, Preston sat in the front row, his face beaming with pride, just as he had done at every one of her professional achievements. On their 40th wedding anniversary in 1925, their children and grandchildren gathered at the ranch for a celebration. The property had grown significantly over the decades, now encompassing several thousand acres and supporting multiple families. The original house had been expanded, but the observatory still stood on the hill, still used regularly by Amelia and anyone else interested in stargazing. 40 years, Preston said in his speech at dinner, his voice still strong despite his age. 40 years since I married the most remarkable woman I have ever known. People have asked me over the years how we made it work, how an uneducated cowboy ended up with a brilliant scientist. The answer is simple. We chose each other every single day. Through good times and hard times, through success and failure, through everything life threw at us, we chose to be partners. We chose love. Amelia stood to join him, tears streaming down her face. Preston gave me something I did not even know I needed. A home, a family, a love that sustained me through everything. I came to Montana searching for celestial phenomena, but what I found was so much better. I found my soulmate, my best friend, the other half of my heart. And I would do it all again in a heartbeat. They kissed to the applause of their gathered family, and Amelia thought about how far they had come from that frightening evening in the canyon. Neither of them could have predicted then where their journey would lead, but every step had been worth it. As the party continued, their oldest grandchild, Thomas's son Nathan, approached them. At 18, he was preparing to attend college himself, planning to study astronomy like his grandmother. "Grandma, Grandpa," he said, "I was wondering if you could tell me about your first meeting. The real story, not just the family version." Amelia and Preston exchanged glances, then nodded. They took Nathan up to the observatory, where 3 generations of Parkers had learned to love the stars, and they told him the full story. About the bandits and the fear and the miraculous rescue. About the telescope and falling in love and making impossible choices. About building a life that honored both their dreams. "So you see," Amelia concluded, "your grandfather saved my life that day. But more than that, he gave me a reason to live. He showed me that I could be more than just my work, that I could have love and family and still make meaningful contributions to science. He gave me everything." Nathan looked thoughtful. "But you gave Grandpa everything too, did not you? You showed him the universe, taught him to dream bigger than just ranch work." "That is exactly right," Preston said, pride evident in his voice. "We saved each other. That is what real love does. It makes you more than you could be alone." They stayed in the observatory for hours, 3 generations together, watching the stars that had brought Preston and Amelia together all those years ago. Amelia pointed out constellations and explained the science behind celestial motion, while Preston added his own observations from decades of night watches. When Nathan finally left to rejoin the party, Preston and Amelia remained behind, sitting close together in the darkness. "I wonder," Preston said softly, "if the universe really did bring us together, if some cosmic force arranged for me to be riding past that canyon at that exact moment." "Does it matter?" Amelia asked. "Whether it was fate or coincidence, the result is the same. We found each other, and we built a beautiful life together." "I suppose you are right," Preston agreed. "Though I like to think that somewhere up there in all those stars you study, someone or something was looking out for us, making sure 2 people who needed each other would find each other." Amelia leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the familiar comfort of his presence. After 40 years, she still felt the same flutter in her chest when Preston smiled at her, still reached for his hand whenever he was near. Love, she had learned, did not fade with time. It deepened, growing richer and more complex with every shared experience. "I love you," she said simply. "As much today as the day we married, more even because now I know what we are capable of together." "I love you too," Preston replied. "You are still the most amazing woman I have ever known. My brilliant, beautiful wife." They sat together in the observatory until dawn began to break, talking about their life and their children and their hopes for the future. Neither of them was young anymore, and they both knew their time together would not last forever. But that made each moment more precious, each day a gift to be treasured. As the sun rose over the Montana landscape, painting the sky in brilliant colors, Preston helped Amelia to her feet. They walked slowly back to the house, where their family was beginning to stir, ready to continue the anniversary celebrations. "No regrets?" Preston asked as they paused on the porch, looking out over the ranch they had built together. "Not a single one," Amelia said firmly. This life with you has exceeded my wildest dreams. I set out to study the stars, but I found something so much better. I found love and home and purpose beyond anything I imagined." "Me too," Preston said. "Me too." They went inside to join their family, grateful for every moment they had been given, every day they had shared. The years ahead would bring changes, challenges, eventually separation when one of them passed. But they faced it all together, just as they had faced everything for 40 years. Their love story had started with violence and fear, with a desperate rescue in a remote canyon. But it had become something beautiful and lasting, a testament to what was possible when two people chose each other completely. Preston and Amelia Parker had built a life that mattered, not just for themselves but for the children and grandchildren who would carry their legacy forward. As the anniversary party resumed, with music and laughter filling the house, Amelia caught Preston's eye across the room and smiled. He smiled back, that same slight smile he had given her on the first night they met, and she knew that despite all the years and changes, he was still the same man who had ridden into her life and transformed it completely. The man who had saved her from bandits and shown her what truly mattered. The man who had believed in her dreams and helped her achieve them. The man who had loved her unconditionally for 40 years and would love her for whatever time they had left, her star, her home, her everything. And as the sun climbed higher in the Montana sky, its light falling on a family gathered in love and celebration, Amelia knew that she had found what every astronomer seeks. Not just understanding of the celestial realm, but a glimpse of something even more profound and beautiful. The infinite power of love, and the way it illuminates everything it touches, making even the darkest night bright with possibility. She had searched the stars for answers, but the greatest truth had been right here all along, in the warmth of Preston's hand and the home they had created together. In the life they had built, one day at a time, one choice at a time, always choosing each other, always choosing love. It was, Amelia thought, the most elegant equation she had ever discovered, the most beautiful phenomenon she had ever observed, the greatest discovery of her life. And she would spend every remaining moment being grateful that a cowboy had ridden past a canyon one summer evening in 1883, that he had been brave enough to help a stranger, that he had been willing to look up at the stars and see wonder rather than just darkness. Preston Parker had given her the universe, but more importantly, he had given her himself. And that had made all the difference.